You walk into an Indian restaurant, sit down, and the moment that food hits your table, something happens that you cannot explain. The curry is richer than anything you have ever made at home. The chicken is impossibly tender. The bread has this crispy, buttery, slightly charred perfection that your stovetop version never achieves. You have tried following recipes online, you have watched videos, you have bought the spices, and yet, every single time, something is missing. Today, that changes. We are counting down 31 clever cooking tricks that Indian restaurants actually use, the real ones, the ones that professional Indian chefs guard like trade secrets, starting at number 31 and working our way to the one trick that will genuinely shock you at the end. Stay until the very last one because it explains everything. Number 31. Bloom your spices in fat first, always. Before any liquid ever touches your pan, Indian chefs heat oil or ghee until it shimmers, then drop in whole spices like cumin seeds, cardamom pods, or dried chilies. You will hear a loud sizzle and pop. That is not just dramatic. That is the fat physically pulling the fat-soluble flavor compounds out of the spice, compounds that would never fully release in water. At home, most Americans add ground spices directly to wet ingredients and wonder why the flavor sits on top of the dish rather than running through it. Heat your oil, wait for it to shimmer, add whole spices first, let them dance for 30 to 45 seconds, then proceed. This one change will make every dish taste 3 times deeper. Number 30. Use an obscene amount of onions and cook them until they practically disappear. Authentic restaurant-style gravies start with onions that have been cooked down so thoroughly they no longer look like onions at all. We are talking about roughly double the amount most home cooks would use, then cooking them on medium heat for 20 to 25 minutes, stirring regularly until they are deeply golden and have reduced to about a quarter of their original volume. When onions reach this state, their natural sugars have caramelized and their water has evaporated. They become a sweet, savory, thick paste that forms the invisible backbone of the sauce. If your curry ever tastes thin or lacks depth, you almost certainly undercooked your onions. Number 29. Grate your onions instead of chopping them for certain dishes. Here's a technique Indians use specifically when they want onions to dissolve completely and invisibly into a sauce. Instead of dicing, use a box grater. Grated onion breaks down cell walls instantly and releases juice immediately, which means it cooks down in about half the time and blends into the sauce so thoroughly that no one would ever know it was there. This is especially useful in marinades and lighter sauces where chunks of onion would be unwelcome. Grate 2 medium onions, toss them in hot ghee, and watch how fast they caramelize. It is almost alarming. Number 28. Make your own fresh ginger garlic paste and use it in a 2-to-1 ratio. Every serious Indian chef has a container of this in their kitchen at all times. The ratio is 2 parts ginger to 1 part garlic, blended with just enough water or neutral oil to make a smooth paste. Jarred versions exist in grocery stores, but they carry a slightly metallic, preservative-heavy flavor that restaurant cooks cannot tolerate. Fresh paste made that morning smells completely different, sharper and more aromatic. To use it, add it to your pan after your onions are golden and cook it for a full 2 to 3 minutes until the raw smell completely disappears and the paste turns slightly golden at the edges. If you skip that cooking time, every dish will taste faintly of raw garlic, and you will not be able to figure out why. Number 27. Toast and grind your own garam masala. Pre-ground garam masala from a jar has usually been sitting on a shelf for months. The volatile aromatic oils that make garam masala special have already been slowly evaporating since the moment it was packaged. Indian restaurants either make fresh batches weekly or buy whole spices and grind them in-house. To do this at home, dry toast whole cumin, coriander, cardamom, black pepper, cloves, and cinnamon in a dry pan over medium heat for 2 to 3 minutes, shaking constantly until fragrant. Let them cool completely, then grind them in a dedicated coffee grinder. The smell will be extraordinary. Use this freshly ground blend as a finishing spice, added at the very end of cooking to preserve those volatile aromatics. Number 26. Rest your cooked meat in the sauce for at least 15 minutes before serving. Indian chefs never plate immediately after cooking. They allow the protein to sit in the sauce off the heat, letting the flavors penetrate the meat fibers through osmosis. During active cooking, meat fibers are contracted and tight. As they relax in the residual heat of the sauce, they open slightly and absorb surrounding flavors. This is why restaurant Indian food tastes like the sauce is inside the chicken, not just coating it. Give your finished dish a 15 to 20-minute rest covered before serving. Your patience will be rewarded dramatically. Number 25. Use dried fenugreek leaves called kasuri methi as a finishing herb. This is the single most commonly skipped ingredient in American home cooking of Indian food, and it is responsible for a flavor note that makes restaurant curry taste like restaurant curry. Kasuri methi has a slightly bitter maple-like herbaceous quality that is completely unique. Indian chefs crumble it between their palms before adding it, which releases the aromatic oils locked inside the dried leaves. They add it in the final 2 minutes of cooking. You can find it at Indian grocery stores or online for just a few dollars. Add 1 to 2 teaspoons to any butter chicken, saag, or dal dish at the end. Taste the difference and then accept that this was the missing piece the entire time. Number 24. Marinate proteins for a minimum of 8 hours, preferably overnight. Restaurant kitchens prep their proteins the day before service. American home cooks marinate for 30 minutes and wonder why their chicken lacks depth. The marinade for tandoori-style chicken includes thick yogurt, ginger garlic paste, lemon juice, red chili powder, and a pinch of turmeric. The lactic acid in yogurt slowly breaks down the outer protein structure over hours, not minutes, allowing every flavor compound to penetrate deeply into the muscle fibers. Put your marinated chicken in the fridge before you go to bed. Cook it the next evening. The depth of flavor will genuinely surprise you. Number 23. Char your proteins intentionally. Indian chefs use extremely high heat on their proteins, particularly in tandoor ovens that reach temperatures home ovens cannot match. But you can replicate this. After your chicken or paneer is cooked through in the sauce, remove it. Place it under your broiler on high for 4 to 5 minutes until you see actual black char spots appearing on the surface. Then, return it to the sauce. Those charred edges contribute a smoky, slightly bitter complexity that balances the rich sweetness of the sauce in a way that no amount of spices can replicate. This is not burning. This is intentional caramelization and Maillard reaction at extreme intensity. Number 22. Add a small pinch of sugar to balance acidic sauces. Whenever Indian chefs work with tomato-heavy sauces, they almost automatically reach for sugar. Not to make the dish sweet, but to neutralize the sharp acidity of tomatoes and bring the overall flavor into balance. About half a teaspoon for a dish, serving 4 people is enough. You should not be able to taste the sweetness. You should simply notice that the dish no longer has a harsh, almost sour edge. This same technique applies if you accidentally over-added lemon juice or tamarind. A pinch of sugar is often the fix that professional cooks use without mentioning it to anyone. Number 21. Build complexity with 2 different types of chilies. Most home cooks use one chili product and call it done. Indian chefs layer heat by using Kashmiri red chili powder for its brilliant red color and mild, fruity heat, combined with regular hot chili powder for actual spice intensity. These two work together to give you a dish that looks spectacular, with a deep, vibrant red color, while also delivering a layered heat that builds rather than just slapping you in the face. The ratio depends on your heat preference, but starting with 2 parts Kashmiri to 1 part regular hot chili is a good baseline for most Americans who want flavor and warmth without overwhelming heat. Number 20. Temper your dish with a tadka at the end. A tadka, sometimes called a tarka or chonk, is a finishing technique where you heat ghee until it is almost smoking. Add whole spices and often dried red chilies. Cook them for 30 seconds until they crackle and pop, then pour the entire sizzling mixture directly over your finished dish. The dramatic hiss you hear is the sound of hot spiced fat hitting the sauce, which instantly blooms the aromatics from those whole spices and embeds them in the top layer of the dish. Dal served at restaurants almost always has this finishing tadka. It adds an entirely new aromatic dimension that cannot be achieved by adding spices at the beginning of cooking. Number 19. Use full-fat yogurt and always bring it to room temperature before adding it. Cold yogurt dropped into hot curry is a recipe for curdling. The proteins in cold dairy clump violently when they hit heat because the temperature differential is too extreme. Indian chefs always use full-fat yogurt that has been sitting on the counter for at least 30 minutes, bringing it close to room temperature. They then add it in small amounts, stirring constantly, and often reduce the heat to medium-low during incorporation. The fat content in full-fat yogurt helps stabilize the proteins and prevents splitting. The difference between a smooth, creamy sauce and a grainy, curdled mess comes down to this one detail. Number 18. Fry your tomatoes until the oil separates before adding any liquid. This is called bunao in Indian cooking, meaning to sauté until the fat separates. After adding tomatoes to your onion, ginger, garlic base, you cook everything together on medium-high heat, stirring frequently, until you physically see the oil start to pool at the edges of the pan, separating from the tomato paste. This signals that the water from the tomatoes has evaporated and the tomatoes have been thoroughly cooked and integrated into the base. If you add water or broth before this happens, your sauce will taste raw and acidic. The oil separation is your visual cue that the base is properly cooked and ready for the next stage. Number 17. Use cashew paste instead of cream for thickening. High-end Indian restaurants often use blended cashew paste to create a luxurious, creamy thickness that is actually more stable than cream and carries its own subtle sweetness. Soak raw cashews in warm water for 30 minutes, then blend them with just enough water to make a completely smooth, thick paste. Add this to your sauce in the last 10 minutes of cooking. It thickens without the risk of breaking that cream carries, adds a natural richness, and gives the sauce a silky body that feels indulgent without being obviously dairy-heavy. This technique is used extensively in restaurant-style korma and certain regional gravies. Number 16. Smoke your curry using the dungar method. This is an ancient technique that Indian chefs use to add a campfire, tandoor-like smokiness, to dishes made entirely on the stovetop. You will need a small piece of natural lump charcoal. Heat it directly over a gas flame using tongs until it is glowing red. Place a small metal bowl or a piece of aluminum foil shaped into a cup directly in the center of your finished curry. Place the glowing coal inside, then drizzle 2 or 3 drops of ghee directly onto the coal. It will immediately begin to smoke heavily. Quickly cover the entire pot with a tight lid and let it sit for 5 minutes. Remove the coal and bowl, and your curry will have a genuine, extraordinary smokiness that makes it taste like it came from a tandoor restaurant. Number 15. Toast your rice before boiling it. Indians who make biryani and pilaf always toast their soaked, dried basmati rice in ghee for 2 to 3 minutes before adding water or stock. The ghee coats each grain and the heat partially gelatinizes the outer starch layer, which means the grains stay separate and fluffy instead of clumping and becoming sticky. It also adds a subtle nutty flavor to the rice itself. After toasting, add your hot liquid, not cold, because adding cold liquid to hot toasted grains causes uneven cooking. This is why restaurant biryani has those individual, perfectly separated grains that your homemade version never quite achieves. Number 14. Layer your biryani and cook it on dum, which means sealed steam cooking. Restaurant biryani is never stirred together in one pot. The par-cooked rice and the cooked meat gravy are layered separately. Then the pot is sealed with a tight lid, sometimes even sealed with dough around the edges, and cooked on the lowest possible heat for 20 to 25 minutes. The steam trapped inside does the final cooking and forces the aromatics from the meat layer upward through the rice. This is why every spoonful of restaurant biryani contains both flavors simultaneously, not just meat-flavored rice, but actual distinct layers of seasoning at different depths. Number 13. Use black cardamom alongside green cardamom for depth. Green cardamom is floral and sweet. Black cardamom is smoky, earthy, and medicinal in the best possible way. Indian chefs use both together in biryanis and rich meat curries. Black cardamom is not just a stronger version of green cardamom. It is an entirely different ingredient that adds a smoked camphor-like quality that professional cooks describe as the difference between a 2-dimensional and a 3-dimensional flavor. Drop 1 whole black cardamom pod into your oil at the start of cooking any lamb or chicken dish, and notice how it changes the aromatic foundation of the entire recipe. Number 12. Acid at the end, not the beginning. Adding lemon juice or tamarind to a dish early in cooking causes the acid to cook off and dull, leaving only a faint sourness that lacks brightness. Indian chefs always save their finishing acid for the last 2 minutes before plating. A squeeze of fresh lemon right at the end is sharp, aromatic, and vibrant. the same amount added at the beginning essentially disappears. This applies to everything from dal to fish curry to chaat. When you taste a restaurant dish and it has a bright, lively quality that lifts all the other flavors, that brightness almost always comes from acid added at the very last moment. Number 11. Fry your paneer before adding it to the sauce. Indian chefs never add raw paneer directly to curry. They shallow fry cubes of paneer in oil or ghee until each side is golden and has developed a slightly crispy crust. This serves two purposes. First, the Maillard reaction on the surface creates new toasty flavor compounds that raw paneer completely lacks. Second, the fried crust gives the paneer structural integrity so it holds its shape in the sauce rather than crumbling or dissolving. After frying, soak the paneer cubes in warm water for 5 minutes before adding to the curry. This softens the crust slightly and makes the texture inside pillowy, while the flavor from frying remains locked into the surface. Number 10. Use bone-in meat for gravy dishes whenever possible. Indian restaurant cooks consistently prefer bone-in chicken for curries because the collagen and marrow in bones slowly dissolve into the sauce during cooking, adding an unctuous, gelatinous richness that boneless chicken never provides. The bones also protect the meat from drying out because they conduct heat more gently than exposed muscle tissue. If you are making a curry and you have the option, choose bone-in pieces every time. The difference in the final sauce texture is significant, and it is not something you can recreate by adding broth or stock. Number 9. The restaurant-based gravy trick. Many Indian restaurants make a large batch of a neutral-based gravy at the start of every service day, a blend of deeply cooked onions, tomatoes, ginger, garlic, and basic spices blended until completely smooth. Individual dishes are then finished quickly to order using this pre-made base. At home, you can do the same. Spend 30 minutes making a large batch of this base on a Sunday, blend it smooth, and refrigerate or freeze it in portions. Throughout the week, any curry dish can be ready in 15 minutes by building on this foundation. This is the primary reason restaurant Indian food is served so quickly. Number 8. Blooming red chili powder in hot oil creates a completely different flavor than adding it to wet ingredients. When you add red chili powder directly to the oil after your aromatics, stirring for 30 seconds before any tomatoes or water go in, the fat pulls different flavor molecules from the chili than water would. Oil-soluble compounds, including many of the complex aromatic elements, are only released in fat. This gives a much more rounded, full chili flavor compared to the harsh, almost chalky taste that results from adding chili powder to wet sauce. Always add your red chili powder to the fat first, stir quickly for 30 seconds, then proceed. Number 7. Make your own paneer from whole milk and use it fresh. Indian chefs in serious restaurants make paneer daily because fresh paneer has a moisture content and tenderness that refrigerated store-bought paneer cannot match. Bring 1 gallon of whole milk to a boil. Add 3 tablespoons of white vinegar or lemon juice. Stir gently until the curds separate completely. Drain through a cheesecloth, squeeze out the excess liquid, and press under a heavy object for 30 minutes. The resulting paneer is silky, tender, and absorbs curry flavors beautifully. Store-bought paneer is often dense and rubber-like by comparison, particularly if it has been sitting in packaging for any length of time. Number 6. Add a fried onion paste called barista to enrich sauces. Barista is thinly sliced onions fried in oil until they are deep golden brown and crispy, almost to the point of burning, then drained and ground into a paste. This paste carries an incredibly intense, sweet, savory, caramelized onion flavor that is unlike anything you can achieve through regular cooking. Indian restaurant chefs add tablespoons of barista to korma, biryani, and rich meat sauces to add a depth that is almost impossible to identify but immediately noticeable when it is missing. The fried paste also acts as a natural thickener, adding body to sauces without changing their texture visibly. Number 5. Understand and use the 5 levels of heat in Indian cooking. Indians manage heat levels in stages throughout cooking, not just at one point. They use high heat for blooming spices, medium-high for cooking onions, medium for adding tomatoes and dry spices, medium-low for incorporating dairy or yogurt, and low heat for the final simmer that builds the sauce. Most home cooks use 1 or 2 heat levels throughout and create either burnt aromatics or underdeveloped sauces. Matching the right heat level to each specific stage is what separates technically skilled cooking from simply following ingredients. Number 4. Use ghee, not oil. For finishing, regardless of what you used for cooking. Even if you cook the entire dish in vegetable oil, Indian chefs almost always finish a dish with a small pour of ghee right before serving. Ghee has butter-soluble flavor compounds that are absent from vegetable oil. When added at the end, these compounds are not cooked away and they coat the tongue as you eat, delivering a rich, milky, nutty flavor note that makes the entire dish feel more luxurious. 1 tablespoon of ghee stirred in at the very end of cooking adds a finishing quality that will make people ask you what your secret is. Number 3. Rest your naan dough for at least 2 hours before cooking. Indian restaurants prepare their naan dough hours before service. The yeast needs time to create fermentation bubbles throughout the dough, and the gluten network needs time to relax. If you cook naan from dough that is only rested for 15 or 20 minutes, it will be tough, chewy, and will not puff properly. After 2 to 4 hours of rest at room temperature, the dough becomes extensible, pillowy, and develops a slightly tangy flavor. Stretch it thin before cooking because restaurant naan is thinner than most people make at home, and cook it on the highest heat your equipment can produce for those dramatic charred bubbles. Number 2. Always add your ground spices at the right moment, which is after the onions are cooked but before the tomatoes. Timing of spice addition is something Indian chefs instinctively know and rarely explain. Ground spices need at least 2 to 3 minutes of cooking in fat with some onion mass around them to properly bloom. But they cannot handle the full acidic environment of tomatoes during this blooming phase, or they become bitter. Add your turmeric, coriander powder, and cumin powder after the onions are golden and the ginger garlic paste is cooked. Stir everything together for 2 full minutes on medium heat, then add your tomatoes. This sequence gives you fully bloomed spices with no bitterness and no raw spice taste. And now, number 1, the whole stick of butter finish. This is the reason restaurant Indian food always tastes richer, silkier, and more luxurious than anything you make at home. But that's not all. When a dish is fully cooked and has rested, whether it is dal makhani, butter chicken, tikka masala, or even a simple dal, Indian restaurant chefs take a full stick of cold unsalted butter, cut into cubes, and stir it into the hot finished dish just before serving. The cold butter melts gradually into the sauce, and a process called emulsification occurs where the fat binds into the liquid and creates an extraordinarily silky, velvety, rich texture and a glossy sheen across the surface. The dish does not taste oily or heavy. It tastes luxurious in a way that nothing else replicates. This is called mounting with butter, and while French chefs are famous for it, Indian restaurant chefs do it constantly, and it is the true final secret behind every incredible bowl you have ever had at a great Indian restaurant. The next time you make any Indian sauce dish at home, take it off the heat, let it rest, and then stir in that cold butter cube by cube until it disappears into the sauce. That is the secret hiding in plain sight that Indian chefs hope you never figure out. Let me know which of these tricks you'll be doing this week.